Okay, well, my name is Ron Anderson. Middle name is Durant. I was named after my grandfather. And I have very fond memories of Granddad. That's what we called him. In fact, I think I was a teenager before I realized his name was Wilbert. And we always called him Granddad. He was a fine example of what a pastor should be. One of the things I remember, because I grew up in the church that he once pastored, in fact, the church that he started, was that all the people that knew him from that time, senior citizens and what have you, never had one negative thing to say about Pastor Forde. They felt he was the consummate pastor, loved children, loved education, of course. It's one of the first things he started when he came to this country and started a little church there in Chicago, was to build a school. He understood there was a principle that says, if you take the hand of a child, you'll win the heart of the parent. And the school grew rapidly. In fact, in the middle 80s, there were, I think the school numbered about 300 students. And there were times when they had national recognition for things that they had accomplished there at Shiloh Academy. But going back to Granddad, I remember the times that we would go to Detroit to visit him on special occasions, such as burning the mortgage of the church that they had purchased there on the east side, Burns Avenue Church. And I remember how proud I was walking in. Some of the youth that I had known from camp meeting would say, "Is that your granddad?" And I would say, "Yes." And my chest would kind of go out a little bit. And because I was very proud of him. He was well thought of. The children and the youth loved him there also. I also remember his booming voice as he spoke. And I guess I heard Granddad speak maybe, 5 or 6 times as far as a sermon is concerned, a couple of times up on the campground. And I was amazed at his knowledge of the wars that had taken place, the First and Second War, and how he tied it into prophecy, how he knew who the Kaiser was and how the war would end based on Bible prophecy. Very knowledgeable, very astute. His English was impeccable. I remember him speaking on different issues outside of religious issues. He was very well versed. I'm told by my mother and Aunt Zilda that he played cricket. I never thought of him as being athletic, but from what I understand, he was very athletic in his country of Barbados, and he played cricket there. It was very good. He loved his parents. They belonged to the Church of England, so they were very religious. And I have a letter that Winton will be able to video or take a picture of. And he tells his son, Uncle Clarence, Clarence's son, of how he became an Adventist. He was responsible for bringing his parents into the church. And once they were baptized, of course, they remained Seventh-day Adventists until they died. As he began to raise his children, when the call came after attending Andrews University, at that time it was Emmanuel Missionary College, he became the pastor of the Bridgetown Church and also a well-known evangelist in the island. His call to come to America came from those who had attended the Emmanuel Missionary College and had remembered this black pastor who would be a good fit for the young church in Chicago. I say young church because it was a church, a Caucasian church, with about 13 or 14 members that would have been black. They didn't understand how to minister to the black members, and I guess it became an issue, and so they asked if there at Andrews, if they knew of a black pastor that could come. And so they remembered Granddad and sent a call to him. He, of course, sought the Lord as to whether or not he should come, and he felt the Lord wanted him to stay there and finish the work there that he had begun. 5 years later, the call came again. At this time, he felt the Lord wanted him to come. So he brought his family here to this country. Now, that family would have consisted of his first wife, Uncle Niebuhr, Aunt Zilda, Gladstone, and Clarence. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there were twins that they lost at birth there in Barbados. And my mother was born after they came here to this country. The first place they lived was in Robbins. We have pictures of that, and it's just humorous to see how they looked. They all, including Granddad, they all looked like they were misplaced. But it's just interesting to look and see how they started out in this country. But the work grew fast when he started the work among the black folk. One of the first things he did was to start a school, and as opposed to trying to grow the church. And because the students took the message home to their parents, then the church began to grow. And so all of these things happened under his leadership. One of the things I thought was interesting is, in looking back over Granddad's history, is he never sought to be in the conference office, to be among the administrators. He felt his place was among the people in the churches, and he's very successful everywhere he pastored. Joe and I have good friends who lived in Flint, and they speak of him fondly, saying he was the best pastor they had ever had. And we heard that all over Michigan, and even in Indianapolis, I think it was, where he pastored. They just loved him. So my memories of Granddad were always fond memories. I remember when he came to visit us here in Chicago area, he would stay with us. And I remember on one occasion, he would always call my father Parker. And it would not have been, my father would not have been his first choice because he was a non-Adventist. And my father, at no time did he ever stop us from practicing Adventism. My father admired my grandfather. He felt he stood for strong principles, and when my grandfather made different statements, my father would challenge him, and my grandfather would simply say, "Let's go to the Bible, Parker, and I'll show you." And it was at the time he would say, "That's it, I see it, I understand." And so they had a good relationship. One of the things that, on one occasion that I was going to mention that comes to mind, was that our oldest daughter, Lori, had a way of reciting different things she would see on TV. She would sing songs to them. And it amused us, everybody here in Chicago. But when Granddad was there, some of the things we felt he would not necessarily approve of. And sure enough, on this one occasion, and I'm not sure what it was, Joe, you might remember, but she was singing this song, and a little children's song, and it was not a spiritual song, a worldly song, but it was very cute.
Nothing bad.
And Granddad looked, and he laughed, and he picked her up, and he said, "Oh, it's a beautiful song." And we all laughed at that, just seeing how versatile he was, and how accepted he was of her little escapades. But Granddad was firm in his beliefs, and his doctrines, and his teachings. He never wavered, not once. Any question you asked him, he had the answer for it, and he would always back it up with biblical statements from the Bible. And for Sister White, of course, he knew her thoroughly. One of the things I would like to have asked him is whether or not he had ever met Sister White. I never had a chance to ask him that. I remember on another occasion we were in Detroit staying with them when they were burning the mortgage. Granddad, the next morning, which would have been a Sunday morning, asked me if I wanted to go to the drugstore with him. And I said, "Sure, let's go." And we walked. And I'll tell you, even as a teenager, I had trouble keeping up with him. He had a steady gait, strong gait, and he moved very swiftly. But I enjoyed our conversations to and from the store. So all of my memories of Granddad were very positive. I was very proud of him, of course. And it also gave us, how can I say this, entrance into different churches that we attended, went to visit, and even as a youth playing basketball and doing AY programs. When they found out I was Elder Forde's son, they would always say, "Well, here, you guys got to come to our house. You're Elder Forde." Oh my goodness. And so that was always a privilege. We always had an opportunity to stay at the best homes, get the best food, because they always wanted to, be nice to Granddad's offsprings. There is one story I think is very good. He told us a joke once, and he said it was this. I hope I remember it correctly. I'm just thinking about it. I haven't thought about it for years. But there was a streetcar that was going down the street. The lady had got on with a little baby. I'm having trouble memorizing it. But the crux of the story was the lady had been told that her son was not a very good-looking baby. and she felt bad about that. But after getting on the from wherever she was attending, where she heard that her baby was not a good-looking baby, she came to the stop, and so the conductor said, "Oh, lady, you can get off with you and your monkey." And I don't know why. I still remember that story, and that's not the way he told it, of course. But it was so funny, especially coming from Granddad, because it's not something you would expect him to say. And the other thing, I remember him asking me on occasion when I was in my, I think last year of high school. He says, "Well, Ronald, what do you think you want to be? When you go to college, what will be your vocation as you go on to higher institution of learning?" And I had always thought of course, but I didn't know what answer I should give my granddad, who was a Seventh-day Adventist pastor. And so the first thing I could think of was a medical missionary. And my mother was sitting on the side, and she said, "Huh?" And Granddad never flinched. He heard her. I know he did, but he never indicated that it was something I may have just said just on the spur of the moment. I appreciated him for that. Of course, I never became a medical missionary, and I wish I had shared with him what my aspirations were at that time. Later on, when he found out the vocation I got into, he said he was very proud of me and just strive for success. So that's my story regarding our grandfather, who I cherish.
I remember your mother would always say to you all, remember how your grandfather would look at this. So it kind of kept you all on the straight and the straight path. Right. Because you respect you had for him.
There is a story Joe is reminding me of, and of course we've shared it with our children and those we come in contact with. In fact, even the churches that we belong to, how important it is to share these stories from our grandparents or in our family. But one of the things that Mom always told us was this. She said she remembers fondly when they would wake up in the morning and had to get their shoes together and their clothes together and what have you to get ready to go to school. There was always that point before they left. Granddad would say, "Okay, come on, let's form our family circle." And in that circle, they would stand together, and Granddad would remind them that that circle should not be broken in heaven. That it would bring him great joy to look around that circle and see each one of his children in that circle in heaven. And she said she always remembered that, even when she was going to do things that she had to have second thoughts about, is that with this, first of all, of course, would it glorify her Heavenly Father, but would it make her father sad? And so she always thought that, and so she always shared that with us. And my wife and I have been married for 61 years now, and we still share that story with our children, and they share it with their children. The family circle, will it be broken? Will there be a spot where one of our children, one of our family members is missing? And so that's why we should always pray for one another.